Hello everyone, welcome to Ideal Entertainment. I'm Andrew. We're still nearly 2 months away from the release of Avengers Endgame Encore in theaters, but according to some insider sources in the industry, which we confidently report here on the channel, we should expect the first official trailer by the end of this month. I suspect it might drop next week during D23, but the pressing question remains, will they include any of the new Doomsday footage? This is crucial since, as I often remind you, we can all watch it for free on Disney Plus as many times as we like right now. That said, today we have a significant leak, a complete description of all the additional footage at the end that connects to Avengers Doomsday. There are some truly wild details in this leak. We'll issue our usual spoiler warning and break down this latest rumor regarding the added footage for Avengers Doomsday at the conclusion of Avengers Endgame Encore. If this is accurate, there's one particular detail that recontextualizes everything we know about the Infinity Saga and the actions of the Avengers during Avengers Endgame. We'll dissect it all. First, if you could hit that subscribe button, I'd like to thank everyone who's been subscribing lately and helping to grow our community. We've been experiencing tremendous growth again, and I truly appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet and you enjoy our content, whether you're new to the channel or have been with us for a while, hitting that subscribe button is the best way to support us. Alright, let's start with the usual spoiler warning. When we cover this type of content, we often remind you to take everything with a grain of salt. No scooper gets everything right. Today, this information comes from the Scooper No More Mutants, but if these details happen to be accurate, it's up to you to decide if they might spoil your Doomsday experience. Only you can determine if you're sensitive to such revelations. If you'd prefer to enter the unknown without any foreknowledge, I completely understand, but now is the moment to step back. The leaked description begins here. There are scenes featuring Steve conversing with Pepper and Scott at Tony's funeral. Thor and Steve also have a discussion. Loki shows up at Peggy and Steve's residence, explaining that the Avengers' actions in Avengers Endgame have impacted other universes. They believe they traveled back in time, but in reality, they ventured into alternate universes, creating a Nexus event. For instance, there's a universe where Infinity War doesn't occur, because Thanos has perished, Gamora is absent from that universe, and Nebula is deceased. Steve has transitioned to a timeline closely resembling Earth 616. In this timeline, they have a son, James Rogers, whom you may have seen in the trailer. The final scene in the additional footage depicts Steve, Peggy, and James in a new futuristic universe, residing in a cabin far from urban life. Now, typically when we discuss this type of content on the channel, I either attempt to debunk it immediately, suggesting this seems like a mix of previously shared information or a ChatGPT creation, or I analyze its plausibility based on what we already know, highlighting details that may have been confirmed. However, in this instance, it's genuinely a 50-50 situation. Let me clarify the first point regarding the Avengers' actions. Traveling to a different segment of the multiverse rather than merely returning to the past is something I find hard to accept on any level. That would represent a significant plot recon, and I trust that Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, and the Russos are smart enough to avoid such a misstep. I keep mentioning it, but the despecialized versions of Star Wars clarify everything, while Marvel Studios has established a contrasting standard. There is no such thing as a director's cut. Canon is canon, and what you experienced in theaters is what's available on Disney+. Sure, they might include additional scenes in the Blu-rays and Steelbooks, but what you witnessed in theaters is the official and canonical version of the film. However, if they were to retroactively alter the context of events with just a bit of dialogue, like Loki appearing and saying, "Oh, you didn't just travel back in time, you actually entered a different multiverse," that would be a cheap way to change details to simplify the storytelling of a new narrative. The real issue is that they opted to move forward with Robert Downey Jr. and a lookalike for Victor Von Doom as Tony Stark. They chose to reunite the cast and bring Steve Rogers back, suggesting that Doomsday picks up where Avengers Endgame concluded, but that presents a challenge. It's not just about going back and altering details in Avengers Endgame, and maybe I'm the fool here, but I still respect that they won't do that. Therefore, I can't fully agree with this leaked description. I'll believe it when I see it. On another note, one of the scene details shared here 2 days ago has been confirmed in the last 24 hours. Daniel RPK seemingly verified that Pepper Potts is returning and will be part of the Tony Stark funeral scene that they will revisit. He doesn't explicitly state that this is included in the Avengers Encore footage, but he does mention that this scene is occurring in the film, leading to speculation about a connection between the two, especially since this description was posted just a day prior. We will soon find out, and as we've consistently stated on the channel, although we haven't previously reported on No More Mutants, we acknowledge those who deserve recognition. The Beyond Reporter, Apocalyptic Horseman, and several anonymous Twitter scoopsters with proven track records have been spot on lately. In the near future, we will determine the credibility of the source, but to be completely honest, what I find lacking is the absence of Dr. Doom. Marvel Studios is taking advantage of the chance to re-release Avengers Endgame to boost box office numbers, provide us with some Doomsday teaser footage, and honestly, that feels somewhat self-serving. I understand, though, they haven't had a chance to introduce Doom at all, which is precisely my point. You're going to add potentially 5 to 10 minutes of additional footage at the end of Avengers Endgame Encore, knowing that this is the sole reason to sell these tickets, yet there's no Doom included. I suspect that a significant portion of the footage will indeed feature Doctor Doom. Therefore, when I heard this description, the key element missing for me was the lack of Doctor Doom in any of the footage. There have been speculations for some time that the 3 anvil strikes we hear at the end of Avengers Endgame, which may have originally been a nod to Tony Stark in the cave with the anvil strikes for the Iron Man mask, could now represent 3 anvil strikes as we zoom in on Doctor Doom in his armory. This ties back to a photo shared on the first day of composing, where you could clearly see the words Castle Doomstat Armory Room displayed on a TV monitor behind Alan Silvestri, who is scoring the film. To be frank, as we noted earlier, these scores are typically assigned sequentially, scene by scene, during the final editing of the film. Therefore, if we are heading to the Armory Room, it could either be an early scene in the movie or possibly the initial footage linked to the encore of Avengers Endgame. At San Diego Comic-Con, reporters made several attempts to get closer to the cast to inquire about Victor Von Doom's resemblance to Tony Stark and the implications for Stark's identity. However, the cast quickly shut down those questions, stating that answers would come later and they couldn't discuss it further. Now, we are hearing about a potential revisit to Tony Stark's funeral scene. This is something we've been tracking for the past year. This isn't the first time we've encountered this information, whether it's related to the encore footage or part of the film itself. Numerous industry insiders and leaks have indicated that we will return to that scene. While I have expressed my desire for Marvel Studios to respect the core narrative of Endgame, I hope they can utilize these elements to carve a new path forward. If Tony Stark's funeral scene is included in Avengers Doomsday, beyond just the encore footage, I can't imagine they would revisit that moment without adding significant dialogue between Steve Rogers, Pepper Potts, and Ant-Man. If Pepper Potts is involved in that conversation, it's likely to revolve around Tony. I also wonder if that might be the moment they choose to explain how and why Victor Von Doom resembles Tony Stark. However, the additional footage that Marvel Studios is opting to re-release seems aimed at boosting ticket sales and enticing audiences to watch 5 to 10 minutes of new content at the end of a 3-hour Marvel film we've already seen countless times. The effort must be worthwhile, and I believe including Doctor Doom in this footage could be the key. I don't want to come off as overly negative about this. To me, it feels somewhat self-serving. My primary concern is that they don't alter Avengers Endgame in any way, ensuring that the story remains intact without any lazy retcons just to align with Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars. However, if they approach it creatively, ensuring that any flashback scenes in Doomsday enhance rather than alter the original scenes, I could be satisfied. My focus is more on that than on simply getting us back into theaters. And while I discuss it as if I might not attend, of course I will be there. I'll be purchasing tickets for the opening night. Many of you have inquired about ticket sales, which I believe will begin when the trailer is released on August 25th. They likely wanted to ensure we spent all our money on Spider-Man and Avengers Doomsday before we rush out for the encore tickets. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this matter. Do you agree with my perspective on the necessity of including Doom in this footage? What are your thoughts on the revisiting of Tony Stark's funeral scene, particularly the dialogue between Steve, Pepper, and Ant-Man? It seems Steve might have derived his plan from something mentioned there, possibly involving Pym particles to travel back in time and remain there with Peggy Carter. Perhaps it's a revelation that Pepper has regarding the brevity of life and the sacrifices Tony made for what they truly deserve or what they have now regained. This realization might inspire him to think, maybe I should spend my life with Peggy. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'm here for you as always. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. Be sure to activate the notification bell with all alerts enabled to stay updated with our videos. If you enjoyed today's content, I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit the like button.